Night settled over the quiet suburb, but nothing felt calm. A single scream cut through the darkness. Lights flicked on in every house around the block. People peeked through curtains with trembling hands. No one dared to step outside. Rumors had been spreading for weeks about strange visits at night. No one believed them until now. At the center of it all was a locked room in an old rental house. No one knew who lived there anymore. The landlord avoided questions and changed the subject. Tonight, something inside that room finally broke free. Footsteps echoed down the empty street. A shadow moved where no person should be. And before anyone understood what was happening, the truth had already begun to surface. Ethan Parker woke before sunrise, startled by a noise he could not explain. The house felt colder than usual. His breath formed a faint mist in the dim hallway. He listened carefully, hoping it was just the old wooden frame settling. But the sound returned, a soft tapping against the back door. He hesitated before moving toward it. The tapping stopped the moment he reached the kitchen. Silence pressed against his ears like a warning. He checked the lock twice and stepped back slowly. Outside, the yard was still, but a faint trail of footprints marked the dew. They were small, uneven, and pointed toward the woods. Ethan felt a chill crawl across his spine. He had heard stories from neighbors about strange visitors at night. Children whispering about shapes watching from between the trees. Adults dismissing it as wild animals or imagination. But these footprints were neither. Ethan grabbed his phone and snapped a picture. The flash reflected off something metallic near the edge of the yard. He walked closer, keeping his steps light and careful. A thin silver chain lay half buried in the grass. It was delicate, almost like it belonged to a child. But attached to it was a small metal tag with a single word: Mira. Ethan frowned, searching his memory, but the name meant nothing to him. He pocketed the chain and turned toward the house. The moment he stepped onto the porch, his phone buzzed. A message appeared from an unknown number. Just 4 words that made his heart drop. "Did you see her?" Ethan froze, staring at the glowing screen. He typed back a cautious question. "Who are you?" No response came. The phone buzzed again with another message. "Don't follow the tracks." Ethan looked back at the trail, disappearing into the woods. Every instinct told him to call someone, anyone. Yet he felt drawn toward the trees by a force he couldn't name. The morning sun barely touched the forest, leaving the entrance shrouded in shadow. He stepped closer until the darkness swallowed the light around him. The air felt heavy, thick with damp leaves and something else. Something that smelled faintly like rust. He knelt beside the first footprint, studying its shape. Too small for an adult and too narrow for a child. Almost like it wasn't meant for walking at all. A branch snapped deeper in the woods. Ethan lifted his head, pulse racing. Something moved between the trees, quick and silent. He searched the shadows but saw nothing. Another message buzzed on his phone. This time, 1 word. "Run." Ethan backed away slowly. But the forest no longer felt empty. He sensed eyes watching him from every direction. He clutched the chain in his pocket as if it could protect him. Something whispered his name in a voice barely human. He didn't look back. He ran until the woods vanished behind him. But the whisper followed him all the way home. Ethan locked every door in the house, but the silence felt wrong. He kept checking the windows, as if something might appear. His hands shook each time he passed the mirror in the hallway. He thought he saw movement behind him more than once. In the kitchen, he placed the silver chain on the table. The metal tag with Mira seemed colder than before. He touched it and felt a faint vibration under his fingertips. He pulled his hand away immediately. His phone buzzed again from the counter. Another unknown message appeared without a name. "She's not alone." Ethan paced around the room, trying to steady his breathing. He typed, "Who is she?" The typing bubble appeared, then vanished. Minutes passed without a reply. He stared at the woods through the back window. The footprints had already faded in the warming sun. But something else caught his attention. A shape stood near the tree line. Small, motionless, and facing the house. He blinked, and the shape disappeared. He backed away, feeling his pulse pound in his ears. He grabbed his jacket and stepped toward the living room. A soft tapping echoed from the front door. The same rhythm he heard earlier. 3 light taps. A pause. One final tap. Ethan approached slowly, careful not to make noise. He peered through the peephole and saw no one. But the tapping continued from the other side. He whispered, "Who's there?" The tapping stopped instantly. A child's voice answered in a trembling whisper. "Please open, I need help." Ethan froze, unable to move. The voice sounded honest, frightened, almost familiar. But something about the tone felt wrong. Too calm beneath the fear. He stepped back from the door, refusing to open it. The voice called again, louder this time. "Ethan, please, they're coming." His chest tightened at the sound of his name. He had never heard this voice before. He checked the side window, hoping to see who was outside. No child stood on the porch. No one stood anywhere near the front entrance. But the voice whispered again, this time from the window beside him. "You have her chain, give it back." Ethan stumbled away from the glass. The chain on the table began to rattle softly. The tag lifted, as if pulled by invisible fingers. He grabbed it quickly and shoved it into his pocket. The rattling stopped instantly. His phone buzzed again with a new message. "Do not speak to her." Ethan whispered to himself, too late. A soft scratching started along the side wall. Something dragged its nails from one end of the house to the other. He covered his ears, but the sound grew louder. The lights flickered violently above him. The scratching stopped at the back door. A quiet breath echoed through the thin wood. Then the same child's voice whispered one more time. "Let me in, Ethan. You're already part of this." Ethan backed away from the door, gripping the chain tightly. His breath came fast and shallow. The house felt smaller by the second. Every corner seemed to hold a shadow waiting to move. He tried to steady himself, but the air vibrated faintly. It felt like someone whispering without sound. He walked toward the living room, trying to think clearly. He needed answers, not fear. He opened his laptop and searched the name Mira. Dozens of unrelated results appeared, none useful. He added the town name to the search. Only one result showed anything familiar. A missing persons report from 6 years ago. A girl named Myra Dalton, age 9. Disappeared near the woods behind Ethan's neighborhood. No signs of struggle, no suspects, no leads. The case had gone cold within months. Ethan stared at the photo of Myra on the screen. Her smile was wide, but her eyes looked uncertain. He whispered, "Is this you?" A sudden thud came from the hallway. He slammed the laptop shut and turned toward the sound. The temperature dropped sharply, chilling his skin. He stepped into the hallway and felt the floor vibrate. The lights flickered in a slow, pulsing rhythm, like a heartbeat that didn't belong to the house. He moved cautiously toward the noise. Halfway down the hall, he saw a door slightly open. The guest room door, which he had kept closed for weeks. A soft creak echoed as the door opened wider on its own. Ethan stood still, unable to speak or breathe. A faint glow shimmered inside the room. He took one hesitant step forward. The air tasted metallic, like blood in the back of his throat. He peeked into the room and felt his stomach twist. The furniture was perfectly still, but the shadows were not. They shifted unnaturally, bending and stretching slowly. Something small lay in the center of the carpet. A child's shoe. It matched the one from Myra's missing persons photo. Ethan whispered, "This isn't possible." A soft shuffle moved behind him. He spun around instantly. The hallway was empty, but the air behind him stirred as if someone walked past. He backed into the guest room, gripping the doorframe tightly. His phone buzzed in his pocket, startling him. A new message appeared. "Leave the room now." Before he could react, the shadows in the guest room thickened. They twisted together, forming a shape that resembled a small figure. The outline of a child stood up from the floor. Ethan stumbled backward into the hall. The child-shaped shadow tilted its head at an unnatural angle. Then it whispered in a layered voice, "You took what's mine." Ethan dropped the phone in terror. The lights burst in a shower of sparks. Darkness swallowed the hallway completely. He heard small footsteps rush toward him. He ran blindly toward the living room, heart pounding wildly. The footsteps followed, gaining speed. He slammed the living room door behind him and held it shut. The child's whisper seeped through the wood. "You can't hide from us." Ethan sank to the floor, trembling, as the footsteps circled the door. Ethan pressed his back against the door, feeling every vibration as something moved outside. His heartbeat drowned out every other sound. He tried to slow his breathing, but panic tightened his chest. The footsteps stopped suddenly, leaving a ringing silence behind. He waited, counting the seconds in his head. Nothing moved on the other side of the door. He leaned forward slightly, trying to listen more closely. A faint whisper brushed past his ear from inside the room. He jerked away instantly, staring into the empty air. No one stood near him, yet the whisper lingered like breath on his skin. He crawled toward the far wall, keeping his eyes on the shadows. The living room felt darker than before, as if the windows no longer existed. He reached for the lamp and switched it on. Warm light filled the room, pushing the darkness back for a moment. His hands steadied slightly, but the silence remained unnatural. He pulled the chain from his pocket and placed it on the coffee table. The tag reflected a faint glimmer, almost pulsing. He whispered to himself, "What do you want from me?" A soft tapping answered from beneath the floorboards. Ethan froze, staring at the wooden planks below him. The tapping grew louder, spreading across the floor. It sounded like small fingers drumming in patterns. Then a voice rose from beneath the boards. "Mira isn't the only one." Ethan scrambled to his feet, backing toward the wall. The floor beneath him creaked as if something crawled underneath. He grabbed a flashlight from a drawer and pointed it downward. The light flickered but stayed on. He followed the sound until he reached the far corner of the room. The tapping stopped right beneath his feet. He knelt down slowly, flashlight trembling in his grip. A whisper seeped up through a thin crack. "Look for the second name." Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He shined the light over the floor. The dust shifted slightly near the crack. Something metallic glinted between the boards. He pried them apart with shaky fingers. A small bracelet lay, hidden in the darkness. It was rusted and covered in dirt. A name was etched into the metal, though barely visible. Lena. Ethan felt the room tilt as his fear doubled. Another child. Another missing name. He clutched the bracelet and stumbled backward. The lights flickered violently again. The shadows curled up the walls like smoke. A child's silhouette formed near the doorway. This one larger than the first, its posture rigid and unnatural. The figure whispered in a hoarse, broken voice. "She never left the house." Ethan shook his head, backing into the corner. The figure moved closer, gliding without sound. Its outline flickered like it struggled to stay whole. He lifted the flashlight, but the beam distorted over the figure. It leaned forward with a slow, jerking motion. "You found her name, now find the rest." Ethan's throat tightened as the temperature dropped again. The figure dissolved into a swirl of darkness that seeped under the door. Footsteps echoed from the hallway once more. This time, there were two sets. One slow and dragging. One light and hurried. Ethan grabbed both pieces of jewelry and held them tightly. He whispered, "How many of you are there?" The house answered with 3 soft knocks from the attic above him. Ethan stared at the ceiling as the 3 knocks echoed again. Dust drifted down in slow spirals from the attic door. His pulse hammered against his ribs, each beat louder than the last. He whispered to himself, trying to stay grounded. They can't be real. But the cold in the room argued otherwise. The temperature dropped with each creak above him. He stepped toward the attic ladder reluctantly. His legs felt heavy, as if something tried to hold him back. The ladder unfolded with a long metallic groan. A stale draft blew down from the darkness above. It carried the smell of damp wood and something rotten. He aimed the flashlight upward and climbed slowly. Each step complained beneath his weight. Halfway up, the ladder shook slightly. He froze, gripping the sides tightly. Nothing moved after that, so he continued climbing. He reached the opening and lifted his head into the attic. The beam of his flashlight cut through thick shadows. Old boxes lined the walls, untouched for years. Cobwebs clung to every corner like twisted fabric. Yet the center of the attic was strangely clear. A small circle had been cleared in the dust. Inside the circle lay several objects arranged with purpose. A child's hair ribbon, a broken toy horse, 2 mismatched gloves, and a tiny notebook wrapped in twine. Ethan crawled forward cautiously. The floorboards trembled beneath him. He picked up the notebook and untied the brittle twine. The pages inside were filled with crude drawings. Children with blank faces standing in a row. Trees that bent at impossible angles. A house that looked exactly like his own. He turned another page. A word was scrawled repeatedly across it. Under. Ethan whispered, "Under what?" A whisper answered from behind him. "Under us." He spun around instantly. A child sat at the far end of the attic. Not a shadow this time. Something more solid, more present. The child's face was pale, features blurred like a half-finished painting. Its legs swung gently off a wooden beam. It tilted its head, watching him without blinking. Ethan choked out, "Who are you?" The child stepped off the beam and stood upright. "I am one of them." Ethan crawled backward, gripping the notebook tightly. Another voice rose from the darkness behind him. "And we are not alone." He turned sharply and saw a second figure emerge. Smaller, trembling, arms hanging unnaturally long. Its voice cracked like broken glass. "You found 2 names, but more are waiting." The attic's shadows thickened, as if pulling themselves together. A third figure attempted to form, but collapsed into smoke. The first child stepped closer, pointing at the floor. "They hit us beneath, all of us." Ethan's breath caught as he realized the word "under," repeated in the notebook, was a direction. He whispered, "Under the house." The child nodded slowly. "The ground remembers what they buried." Ethan felt bile rise in his throat. He forced himself to ask, "Why me?" The second child answered with a hollow tone. "Because you heard us." The attic lights flickered violently overhead. The children stepped back, dissolving into shifting black shapes. Their final whisper filled the entire attic. "Find the rest before they wake." The floor beneath Ethan groaned, as if something massive moved below it. He dropped the notebook and scrambled toward the ladder. Behind him, the attic went completely silent. But as he descended, a new sound rose from beneath the house. Soft, rhythmic tapping. Not 2 sets this time. Not 3. Dozens. Ethan reached the bottom of the ladder with his legs shaking. The tapping beneath the house grew louder with every second. It sounded like many small hands, drumming impatiently. He backed away, clutching both pieces of jewelry. The air in the living room trembled like a held breath. The floorboards bulged slightly, as if pushed from below. Ethan whispered, "What do you want from me?" A chorus of faint voices answered from the cracks. "Remember us." He staggered toward the kitchen, trying to think. He grabbed a flashlight and a crowbar from the cabinet. The tapping followed him across the floor like a living rhythm. He crouched near the back door, searching for the crawlspace hatch. His hands shook so badly, he dropped the flashlight once. He forced himself to breathe slowly. He pried the hatch open with the crowbar. A wave of cold air poured out, heavy and stale. The smell hit him next, metallic and earthy. Something old and buried too long. He shined the flashlight into the darkness below. The ground was uneven, marked by shallow depressions. Small footprints, hundreds of them, covered the soil. They overlapped in chaotic patterns. Some led deeper into the crawlspace. Some led directly beneath the living room. He whispered, "No, this can't be real." A soft whimper floated through the crawlspace. Childlike, panicked, painfully human. He climbed inside, his body brushing against cold dirt. The tapping ceased the moment he entered. Silence swallowed the space. He crawled forward slowly, sweeping the light across the ground. The beam landed on something half-buried. A small wooden box. He reached for it with trembling fingers. Inside were several rusted name tags. Faded letters spelled out unfamiliar names. 4, 7, 9. All belonging to children, lost long before he ever knew this town. He whispered, "Who did this to you?" The crawlspace replied with a low, rumbling groan. Not from a child. From something heavier. Something waking up. Ethan crawled backward, panic rising. But the dirt behind him shifted like something blocked his exit. The whispering returned, louder this time. "Don't leave us." Shapes moved in the darkness. Small figures, flickering like candle flames. Their faces were indistinct, but their eyes were hollow. One figure crawled toward him, dragging a broken leg. Another rose from the soil, as if lifted by unseen hands. They formed a circle around him. He clutched the jewelry pieces against his chest. The children reached toward them with desperate hands. Ethan's voice cracked as he shouted, "Tell me what to do." The ground trembled beneath him. Dust fell from the house above. A single voice, clearer and older than the rest, filled the crawlspace. "Give us back our names." He looked down at the box of rusted tags. He looked at Myra's chain and Lena's bracelet. Each child stepped closer, hands outstretched. The whisper grew into a chant. "Give us back our names." Ethan held the tags tightly, feeling their cold weight. He began placing each one gently into the soil. One by one, the small figures touched the ground where the names lay. Their shapes brightened for a brief moment, then faded peacefully into the darkness. The trembling eased. The whispering softened. The last child stood before him with empty eyes. Ethan placed Myra's chain into the child's hand. The child nodded slowly, then dissolved into dust. Silence filled the crawlspace. The tapping stopped completely. Ethan crawled out, covered in dirt and shaking uncontrollably. The house above him creaked like it had taken a breath. He whispered, "Is it over?" A soft knock answered from the basement stairs behind him. One knock. 2 knocks. 3. Ethan froze at the sound, his body refusing to turn around. The house felt heavier, as if holding its breath with him. Another knock echoed up the basement stairs, slower this time. He whispered, "I helped you, I did what you asked." The silence that followed pressed against his ears painfully. A faint creak came from the bottom step. Something began to climb, each step deliberate and slow. Ethan backed into the wall, gripping the last rusted name tag. It was the only one he hadn't returned to the soil. A cold draft curled around his ankles as the footsteps approached. He whispered, "I don't know who you are." A soft voice rose from the darkness below. "You forgot one." Ethan stared at the tag in his shaking hand. The letters were smeared with dirt and age. But one word slowly emerged as he rubbed the surface clean. "ETHAN." The footsteps reached the top step. The basement door eased open with a long, quiet groan. A small shadow stood behind it, waiting,